Good afternoon, Trump's family. Welcome back to my channel. I'm gonna provide a situation update. Thank you for joining me. God bless each and every one of you. Let's just jump right in, folks. There's plenty of things to talk about. Well, if you've got nothing to hide and everything you're saying and everything you're claiming is true, then why did you work so hard to hide the footage? That's a great question that we should be asking ourselves. Of course, not that we should be asking ourselves. We have been Nancy Pelosi and her little January 6th committee have all this footage, 41,000 plus hours, which is now in Tucker Carlson's possession or Tucker Carlson's team. You made all of these grandiose claims. You crafted your precious narrative. You told us it was bipartisan, because you had the support of Liz Cheney and little crying clown Adam Kinzinger. But if everything that you were saying was true, if this picture that you were trying to paint was accurate, and why were you so reluctant to release the footage? Why were you so reluctant to show us all the video evidence if what you were saying was true? Well, very simply because there's a whole lot of very suspicious, fishy things that went on that day, that I believe, based on all the evidence that we've seen thus far involving the House Sergeant at Arms, Nancy Pelosi, his daughter, and other characters. Well, there's a lot of things that Nancy Pelosi doesn't want you to see because it might show direct involvement, some sort of conspiracy to create a psyop or possibly a false flag event on the days of January 6th. Now, is that totally to blame? No, probably not. But was it an element? It seems like it certainly was. We have January 6th, CCTV security camera footage that's bringing up a whole lot of questions that Capitol Police, the House Sergeant at Arms, and Nancy Pelosi need to be answering. Alright, folks, so we got a great tweet from DC Drano on Twitter. A fantastic individual and fantastic account, I might add. He writes as the caption for the video, "Nothing to see here, just a guy wearing an earpiece physically forcing people inside the Capitol on January 6th, and a woman calling him out on it. I'm sure he wasn't a federal agent of any kind. This is why they don't want more video footage released. For the last 2 years, mainstream media figures, Democrats and even some Republicans have gone on the record saying anybody who believes any of those wacky conspiracy theories, the doors were open for protesters that were political agitators, professional agitators, and possibly even federal agents agitating the crowd as security was purposely compromised. Plenty of those people. Well, you're just a wacky conspiracy theorist, ultra mega extremist, wacko, InfoWars tinfoil hat nutcase. Well, I really don't think so. These are legitimate questions based on legitimate video evidence of that day. How can you possibly explain this? How can you explain an individual wearing an earpiece grabbing people and forcing them into the building? Now, of course, this isn't conclusive proof of anything. We don't know who the individual is, whether he works for an agency, a militia group, whether he's an Antifa member, or whether it's a hearing aid. We have absolutely no idea, but it's certainly suspicious. And I think it's legitimate cause for at least basic questioning of the facts. You know, there's a bunch of videos like this that still haven't been addressed. There's the whole magnetically locked door situation, this clip that I'm sure you guys have seen circulate around. Now, I still haven't seen any conclusive proof that those doors are magnetically locked. But I do find it kind of weird, at least kind of interesting, how the individual who is inside the building failed to get the door open and gestured at a camera, and then all of a sudden, the door opens magically? How many more incidents like this are we going to see with the 41,000 hours of footage now being released? Are these videos misleading? Is there a better explanation as to what we're seeing on camera? Or is it part of a grand orchestrated plot to purposely leave the Capitol vulnerable? And we're gonna see a whole lot more compiling evidence to suggest that that's exactly what happened. I don't know. It's really hard to say. The only thing I know is that I have some serious questions. For instance, if the Capitol Police's job was to secure the Capitol and stop people from coming in, why were they letting people in and opening doors if the FBI had warned the Capitol Police in the House Sergeant at Arms that possibly more than 10,000 people would descend on the Capitol that day? And why is it that we have internal communications documents showing that Nancy Pelosi's office was directly involved with her ejecting National Guard, and extra funding to secure the Capitol House? GOP locates emails and text messages showing Pelosi office directly involved in failed January 6th security. Of course, we already covered all the detail and all of those documents released by the House GOP investigative group. So we're not going to rehash any of that evidence. But if the intention was to secure the Capitol, Why is it that they didn't secure the Capitol? I mean, we've all seen the video evidence. These galvanized metal barriers. What are these flimsy barriers supposed to stop? Nothing, and clearly, that seemed to have been the point. Another question I keep asking myself is how the frick did people get through the Columbus doors? These are the Columbus doors at the United States Capitol, historic, beautifully designed masterpieces. But beyond their beauty, these two doors are seriously heavy duty. The doors are 16 feet 8 inches tall and 9 feet 9 inches wide. They weigh approximately 20,000 pounds. How were those doors breached? Who opened them up and allowed people to just simply flow into the rotunda? I mean, look, you guys know me. I'm never one to state something unequivocally without the facts. And in this case, I'm taking the same stance that I have over the last 2 years. I'm not stating anything unequivocally. But what I am going to say is that you're not a crazy person. You shouldn't be gaslit by these dishonest, deep state goons for asking legitimate questions. The Democrat narrative as Trump-bed Trump supporters bad and evil extremism, blah, blah, insurrection, we get it. But it seems as though the truth is that there was possibly an orchestrated conspiracy to purposely create the chaotic events of that day, and that the truth is a whole lot more nuanced, and a whole lot more complex with many, many compacting layers involving different agencies and different interest groups. Was Antifa involved? Absolutely no doubt in my mind that I will state unequivocally we know that for a fact. Were federal agencies involved? Probably. And was Nancy Pelosi and her office directly involved with downgrading security on that day in rejecting Donald Trump's request for the National Guard to be present on that day? Absolutely. Once again, undeniable. Those are simply the facts of the case. The facts that Nancy Pelosi and Liz Cheney's January 6 committee purposely ignored while maintaining they were simply looking for the truth, getting to the bottom of January 6 in their bipartisan investigation. But it looks like we're finally going to get a true bipartisan look. As more and more evidence, more video footage is released. And the question I'm asking myself is how many more of these types of scenarios are we going to get our hands on? I wouldn't be surprised if there's a whole lot more, if the rabbit hole is a whole lot deeper than initially expected. And no wonder Nancy Pelosi and her minions worked so tirelessly to keep it all hidden from the public. Anybody who works so hard to hide the basic truth clearly has something to hide, and I'll tell you one thing, and it seems as though we're gonna get to the bottom of it. And then this is some big news. Is our nation on the verge of splitting apart? Are we seeing a separation between red states and blue states? Many are openly calling for just that. The ultra-MAGA Georgia Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene is openly calling for national divorce. Taking to Twitter, she wrote, quote, "We need a national divorce. We need to separate by red states and blue states and shrink the federal government. Everyone I talk to says this, from the sick and disgusting woke culture issues shoved down our throats to the Democrats' traitorous America Last policies. We are done now, of course." Greene's comments come on the heels of bumbling Biden and surprise visit to Ukraine, where he once again pledged more American taxpayer money for the failed regime to the tune of $500 million, as of course all while Americans in eastern Ohio and western Pennsylvania are still reeling from what in fact may turn out to be the single worst environmental disaster in our nation's history. And just to give you further confirmation on which side are disgusting, vile legacy media, as take a look at this headline from the Philadelphia Inquirer: Trump to return to the scene of his crime. When he visits Ohio, toxic train wreck, it's all Trump's fault. They're actually parroting Democrat talking points. The legacy media is nothing more than a pathetic shill and odious propaganda spewing super PAC for the Democratic Party at this point. So all of this is indeed boiling to the surface with renewed calls for secession. We're starting to hear members of Congress like Marjorie Taylor Greene call for just such a split and national divorce. Now, of course, the typical bard of Republican rhinos, you know, the rhinos are always so reliable. Whenever the lamestream media is circling around any target, they always give Democrats appeasing soundbites for their own adoring press. So one of the most repulsive rhinos out there, Utah Governor Spencer Cox, blasted Greene's tweet with his own, saying, quote, "This rhetoric is destructive and wrong and honestly evil. We don't need a divorce. We need marriage counseling, and we need elected leaders that don't profit by tearing us apart. We can disagree without hate. Healthy conflict was critical to our nation's founding and survival. That's right. We need elected leaders who don't profit by tearing us apart. Instead, they profit by going woke, just like Utah Governor Spencer Cox. Yeah, That was Utah's Republican governor sharing with his state's high school representatives. His pronouns. Obviously, Cox is one of the ones that Marjorie Taylor Greene would like to leave behind. In our national divorce. Remember, Democrats cannot win in a number of red states like Utah. They can't win as Democrats, so they run this Republicans like Lindsey Graham, Mitt Romney. They're Democrats run as Republicans, but they governance Democrats. That's basically what a rhino is. Well, I prefer Diablo, Democrat, and old but label. Now, to put this on context, this is not the first time that Greene has called for national divorce. Back in December of 2021, she made the very same exhortation. Back then, Greene retweeted with comment, a tweet by Pedro Gonzalez, an associate editor of Chronicles magazine. And what Gonzalez did is, he responded to a pathetic leftist who was reluctantly relocating from California to Florida. So this leftist tweeted out how much he loathed the politics of Florida, but he recognized that the quality of life was infinitely better there than in the ultra-leftist cesspool of California. And so this fellow, of course, Pedro Gonzalez, tweeted out in response, quote, "This guy is moving from California to Florida because he can't stand living in the mess that live politics created, and he still has the audacity to talk down to Floridians about their politics. Lives are a cancer. They're the absolute worst people in the country." And he continued, "I support actively discriminating against transplants like this through legislation. They shouldn't be able to vote for a period, and they should have to pay a tax for their sins." So you get the gist there. He's basically advocating making these blue state transplants pay a sin tax. I love it, a sin tax to pay for the societal rot their politics cause, and they shouldn't be allowed to vote for a period of time until their left toy brainwashing can be reversed. So Marjorie Taylor Greene back then tweeted out in response, quote, "That's all possible in a national divorce scenario. After Democratic voters and big donors ruined a state like California, you would think it wise to stop them from doing it to another great state like Florida." And she went on, when she got some comparable pushback from Democrats like she got from rhinos this time around, she wrote, quote, "You know what's necessary about threatening a divorce? It's a wake-up call to the one offending the other that they've had enough. Happy marriages are the result of two committed people working together, resolving differences and changing behavior that hurts the other. But the state of our union is currently far from happy. And I really don't care how many Democrats I offend by calling it out for your information. You like our red states because of our politics, and it's our Republican politics that create the very environments you like. So I will not apologize when I used to discuss ideas that stopped Democrat voters, and donors were moving on to the shitholes they created with their Democrat votes, and donations from ruining great red states by bringing your disastrous ideas and destructive votes with you for your information. We Republicans don't want your blue votes ruining our red home states. We don't want high taxes, high crime, high amounts of perverse school curriculums, loss of freedoms, and authoritarian, big government in our red state. That what you Dems vote for. If you're so offended by my comments about national divorce, and take a real hard look inward and ask yourself why it's sadly such a popular idea with Republicans, and it is, we're going to find out just how popular secessionist sentiments are among Republicans and Democrats. Waited, do you see this? Thank you very much. WWG1WGA. Give me your thoughts below and hit